Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast, where we help people to combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective. Today's guest is Michael Alan Tate, founder and president of On the Same Page Consulting and an Amazon best-selling author. Mike works with successful executives, entrepreneurs, and technical professionals who are seeking a simple action-focused plan to effectively manage a career transition, keep teams on the same page, and prepare for leadership succession. With over 20 years' experience as a career consultant and strategist, Mike knows that busy people want to navigate the murky waters of transition as quickly and effectively as possible. He's also a published author of 3 books, Design a Life That Works, The White Shirt, and Roll Up Your Sleeves, Living and Leading in a World of Constant Change. Mike also has a podcast, Small Time Leaders. It's a 10-minute interview of an accomplished business leader who shares their stories about a person who did or said small things that was so pivotal that it changed them forever. So please welcome to the show, Mike Tate. Mike, welcome. How are you today?
Oh, great, Bob. Thanks for having me on your show. We finally got together.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm looking forward to this because there's so many things that you do that are very interesting. I was looking at some of your books, but before we get into that, let's tell the audience more about who you are and how did you get to where you are today, if you would.
Oh, sure. A little bit of my background. I was went to University of Alabama, Roll Tide.
Okay.
First, in school, I worked for UPS, and when I left school, I kept working for UPS. Then I had a bad accident, kind of changed my life. I went to seminary, and I was a church administrator for several years. And then I went through a divorce, and there's a Baptist church. They suggested a good time for a career change. And I got into this work, and I've been doing. I was actually in corporate outplacement for years, which is, congratulations, you're fired. Here's Mike.
Right.
And I
You're
I did
the nice
that.
guy, yeah.
Yeah. I'm a coach, and I tell people I was doing coaching when coaching wasn't cool.
Yeah.
When you had to do those kind of things. So I did that kind of coaching, kind of career crisis coaching. And now I actually work with companies about keeping their good people and helping them move forward in the organization. And when people are leaving on a positive note, I help them make those transitions. So that's a little bit about where I came from and how I got here. So.
Well, that's always interesting because I know I speak to a lot of corporate audiences myself, and a lot of times what you see is they forget that the people are people first.
Yeah.
Is that something you see more of? And how can corporations realize to see the betterment of people and show that positiveness within not only what they do, but who they are?
Yeah, there's just a lot of power in encouragement and just appreciation for people. It doesn't take a whole lot, but it's just so hard to do because we get wrapped up in the numbers.
Yeah.
I always say if you go for numbers, well, C.S. Lewis said, go for heaven, you get earth thrown in, go for earth, and you get neither. And so I think that applies because if you go for culture, which is what we're talking about, treating people and appreciating people, you'll get performance thrown in. But if you just go for numbers, you'll get neither. Yeah. And so I talk about that with, it's always the guy at the top or the lady at the top who sets that tone. And so it really comes from them, I know I just met yesterday with a group, and they're all depressed during this time and don't know what to do, kind of down in the mouth. And their people are, and I said, somebody told a joke or something during the meeting, they started laughing, and then we started just kind of having some fun, and they said, this is what we needed today. We didn't need to solve a problem. We needed to have some joy. And I said, well, you know what? What do you think your people need?
Yeah.
And what they did, they actually they brought in an ice cream truck this week, and they started going around just into different departments and just thanking people. They started that 2 weeks ago. It's changed everything, just that little thing right now. So, yeah, it is so easy to let it slip by, though, because.
And that's something you talk about that, like you said, it's easy to do. I get it. Okay, an ice cream truck costs money, we budgets and all that. But going around just saying hi to people, how you doing, smiling, appreciate what you're doing. Those are simple acts of kindness that just illuminate people.
It is, yeah. And just to mention something about them, and it actually started because they had a guy who had been 1 year, he had been he was an alcoholic, and he got treatment, and he was 1 year clean.
Good.
And they went and just applauded, just gave him that kind of feedback. So those little things, just those encouragements, and gratitude just goes a long way for everyone. And one of the points in my book, the roll up your sleeves, which is around leading during this changing time, is that the best way to get through your struggles of this time is to help someone get out of theirs.
Yeah.
Just something small you can do just to help. That's kind of the way we change, is helping other people rather than kind of focus on ourselves, things like that.
Well, and that's always a good way too I've got a similar book. It says life don't owe you nothing, a reality check to achieve greatness. And it's that same idea of you got to get out there and do something, make a difference, dig a garden or pull some weed, get outside and do something, because it's not going to happen unless you do something.
Right.
And it's interesting, you being went to seminary.
Right.
The Bible talks about that so much too. Nothing's going to be handed to you. You got to go get your daily bread,
Yeah. James tells us we don't work, we don't eat.
Yeah.
And and then always find comfort in the scripture. And during this time, I have this posted on my wall: do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God that transcends all understanding will guard your hearts and minds. And I just look at that every day, and since this whole thing started, that we need to remember that we're not in control here, and this is going to pass. And if you think you're in control, you really are in trouble. So.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like tell me a little bit more about your book, your latest one there, Roll Up Your Sleeves, because it's an interesting concept. So fill us in on that. I think it has a lot that people can reiterate from that, just that idea of getting out there and making a change, because even in these times, we need to do that. So fill us in on that.
Sure. Yeah. So Roll Up Your Sleeves. It's the second. I have two books in a series. They're parables. This is a parable, a business parable. My first book, The White Shirt, is about how to find your life-giving career. Mm-hmm. And this book, Roll Up Your Sleeves, same shirt analogy, is about how do you lead during this changing time. And I wrote it, and it was supposed to come out in November. The publisher called me in March and said, we got to get it out now, because it is so timely. Yeah. So what it's about four boys who have a mentor who teaches them the lessons of leading during times of change. And there's several observations they made and one of them that is change is not the same as transition. And people would use those terms that's the same thing, but they're not. Change is an event. Transition is the emotions you go through after that change happens. Okay. And in business, we plan a lot for change, but we don't plan because a manager can make a change, but a leader has to lead people through transition. And the way you do that is to realize that everybody's personality is different. They're going to move through this transition in their own way. And the best way to help them is to ask questions about, for example, when I meet with everyone, I'll say, so what's been positive about this and what's been hard? Mm-hmm. And I meet with and I ask that question. They go, no, what? And they talk for 30 minutes. And I said, nobody's asked you that question. I bet nobody's asked your managers that question. That is a healing thing you can do. Just let people say what was hard and what was positive. I mean, those are some of the points we make in the book. And also about role clarity is extremely important during change. And purpose, is everything. If organizations forget during this time, they should be talking about their core values, right, what they believe, what their vision is. Those kind of things keep people and I have a little graph in my book. I draw a lot. Actually, that idea of transition and change comes from the Exodus story, which is Moses was in Egypt with the children of Israel, and he said, "Let my people go," and he wouldn't. And they had a change. They left, and they had an ending, which was the Red Sea. Yeah. You have to have an ending before you can go forward. You can't have a beginning. You have a new beginnings. And he went through the wilderness, and they went through shock, denial, anger, all the stuff we go through. So but they had a promised land. Yeah. And that's the hardest thing during this time is that, every time I talk with a management group, I'll say, so what is your promised land? Well, we got to have a 2 month vision, not a 5-year vision, just something we can share that's positive. And part of that is just really, let's bring some happiness to people. That's a good theme to stick on right now. So
Yeah, it's interesting that people forget they have immense power, and it comes in the form of a little red button that they can turn on the remote control and turn off that TV. You know,
yep.
you don't have to listen to all the stuff going on in the news.
Oh
They
man.
sensationalize and they tell you all the negatives and all the bad things. What about the good things? They give you 5 minutes at the end of the 11 o'clock hour, right?
Right. Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Shut it off. I know. I just wrote a blog last week, and I got a cartoon. And on the cartoon, there's a man and a wife sitting on the couch with a TV there. It says news on it, and the caption is, "It helps if you put your mask on." And the lady has the mask over her eyes, and I added an earplugs in.
There you go.
So yeah, at our church we do a time of fasting, and fasting is not always food; it can be something else. And we're in it right now, and I'm fasting news for
Yeah,
21 days. I'm not going to look at it. So I'm with you. Junk in, garbage in, garbage out,
that's
kind
right.
of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's something. Well, with that idea, what is something you think, I mean, you've probably seen a lot of different things through your career. What are some things some younger people can look at to keep that positiveness going, whether it's a career, whether it's just what's going on? Like we mentioned, turn off the news. That's one thing. What are some other things you think people can do to be more positive, not only in the workplace, but in their life?
yeah. Well, I guess that my basic recommendation would be to first, write some goals down if you have them, and remember what those are,
Yeah.
because during this time, we get distracted by all these,
Squirrel.
yeah, whatever pops up. Yeah, having that, but also find someone, even if you're young, to mentor,
Hmm.
because there's nothing that gives you, helps you. If you teach, you get more out of teaching than you do the teaching itself. So that just to take that time to remember your goals, and then take some time to help someone else. So there's always someone who's a different spot than you are, and just taking that time to go out and uh, you know count your blessings, help somebody else, and set some goals would be the three things I would say pull back
Right.
to. And
And those are good, because even in your podcast, you talk about that idea of, you know, what's something that influenced you or someone said to you that influenced you. It's that idea of letting that other person, giving that credit where it's due to that other person. And we
right,
talked about that before we got on it. And that's a great concept, because it shows people the idea of gratitude too, that we can share what's been given to us. And that idea of mentoring does that. It
yeah,
shares that, that idea that, we've learned something, let's share it with others. And that's what our society, I think, needs, is that idea of sharing great value, our greatness. What can you tell us more about that idea of sharing your greatness? And I mean, it seems like your books go with that idea of, okay, learn, grow, share.
right.
What's some other things you recommend for sharing for people? Because I think we need that today. Is simple things we can do to just
Yeah.
enlighten our world.
Sure. Well, when I used to be an outplacement, and people would lose their jobs, and we'd had offices, and we helped them through all that, we could always tell when a person was about to get a job. We back then we actually we had people send thank you notes,
Okay.
was what this really is going to, and we would count the thank you notes. When they got up to around 30 thank you notes, they usually got a job offer or two.
Wow.
And it was just, you could watch it, you could just see it happening, because gratitude, you can't be grateful and worry at the same time.
Nope.
It doesn't work.
No.
There's no way that so if you're you being thankful, thanking people that have helped you, looking back and saying, who are those shoulders of those giants I stood on that got me here, and just giving those people some credit, and getting back with them and thanking them. And then also, you can't worry while you're learning.
No.
So what during this time at the end of this deal, what's going to be better about you than when you started? That's
Right.
what I would say. That's how I'd set the goal is, because when it started, I had always wanted to learn how to use Zoom and facilitate meetings on Zoom. But, I wasn't going to do it till I got a gun to my head.
Yeah.
And
Well, now
now,
you did.
yeah, last week I facilitated 2 board meetings on Zoom,
Yeah.
and I've started doing some things, with my book and doing classes. And, it's just, if you're learning, you're growing and you're not worrying. And, so learning and letting people know, and, set yourself a developmental goal during this time. So how am I going to be better after this over? What is my lesson from this pandemic? We
Right.
all have a lesson, and if we don't learn it, I always say you don't learn it now, it's behind door number 2 and door number 3. They're all coming. Yeah. Anyway, that's what
That's
I'd
great.
suggest. Some ideas.
Yeah, you're not going to get away from learning. And I remember Zig Ziglar used to have I guess a scenario he would talk about, and a lady was so determined. She says, "You got to help me. I hate my work." And he's like, "Well, what?" He goes, "I want you to go home and take a piece of paper, fold it in half. And on one side, you write down what you like, and one side, you write down what you don't like." "Oh, that'll be easy. I don't like anything." And, he's like, "Well, just do it." She goes, "Well, no, you need to help me." He goes, "I can't help you if you don't do. If you don't take the action, I can't help you." And she started writing down those things. And what do you know? She realized that she really liked a lot of things, and a lot of benefits came from her job. And she started to be appreciative of it, and more gratitude, and grow in that concept.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's,
And that's, yeah. And it's that thing about, I don't feel like doing something. Uh, there is a principle that is, feelings follow actions.
yeah.
Take an action. There's a little book called The 5-Second Rule.
Yep.
I don't know if you've read it. I mean,
Yes, it's a great book.
Mel Robbins, she endorsed my
Yep.
last book. And that, as a matter of fact, that book, because of that book, I actually got my first book. I got a publisher in New York, and I had been trying to find a book agent forever.
Mhm.
They just don't call you back.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine mentioned, he said, "I knew this guy who was an agent for me years ago. Why don't you call him?" And I'm going, "Oh man, I don't want to hear rejection one more time." And I read Mel's book,
Yeah.
and she said, the 5-second rule is not about the food on the floor, and when you pick it up. The 5-second rule, if you have an idea, if you'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and take an action. I
Yeah.
literally did that, and I sent an email to that agent. 10 seconds later, I get an email back, "When can we talk?"
Wow.
3 days later, I had a contract.
Wow.
And it happened because of that 5-second rule, which is, just because, whenever you don't want to get upset, you count to 10 to
Yeah.
slow down. You count, but you do that 5-second thing back. I mean, and you do it, and you'll take an action, right or wrong, it'll get you moving. So, momentum, as a friend of mine says, take a step. Momentum's a wonderful thing. So
Yes.
kind of pulls us forward.
And it's funny because I always think of that 5-second rule. I think of that first thing in the morning when the alarm clock goes off, because she talks about that idea. Don't hit that snooze button. No,
Right. Yeah.
get up. Okay, I'm thankful for that I heard the alarm to begin with. That means I got another chance. So get up and let's get going at it. We got some
Yeah.
things to do. We got some creation to create. So why not go
Sure.
after it?
Yeah.
That's great.
She is great. So
And
that was just such a simple idea. Yeah.
and it's interesting you mentioned that too, because I want to reiterate that with some of our listeners. Reading. It sounds like you do a little bit of reading. That's
Yeah.
educate yourself, learn things.
Mhm.
That's something that we want to continue in our life. How have you done more of that, or who's taught you about that? Or, is it something you adapted to just through time, or how did you come about wanting to do more reading, learning?
When I was when I was growing up in my little hometown, we had one caution light. The bookmobile would come
Okay.
really, truly every summer, and my mom make us get a bunch of books. I started learning to read then, and loved it. Now I don't, I read different types of books. I used to read a lot of self-help books. I read a lot of biographies and things, but I listen. All my books are audible because
Right.
people do listen, and I listen to a lot of books. now more than I ever have. But I still read a good biography or a good Western. I mean, I love Westerns.
Hmm.
And
Louis L'Amour.
oh my gosh, I've read
Hmm.
all his books, and yeah, I've just always loved. I'm not a fast reader. I just and I would tell you, even as an author, what I'm doing, this is like a miracle. There is no way I should ever have written a book or even stood up to speak, because I never said a word in high school. You know, it's kind of the guy in the back of the room. Uh, and in college, I actually paid somebody to write some of my papers because I was told I was so bad at it. But you know, it was the one guy who saw some of my writing one time, and he said, when I was 40 years old, he said, "You have a voice." And I went, "Well, I'm talking to you." He said,
Yeah.
"No, I'm telling you, you have a voice, a writing voice." And just that one word of encouragement,
Right.
you know, that's sometimes that's all it takes. People just need to hear something that somebody looked inside. You know, you hear a lot of flattery, you know, great job and all that, but if you can look at someone and say, you know, that was a great job. You know what it is? I've noticed this. You're so organized and detail oriented.
Right.
And I just want to let you know that. I mean, that's what changes people right there.
Right.
Just that little, and what it does, if you do that for other people, I mean, the encouragement you get is just way beyond anything. It comes right back at you 10 times. So,
And it's always something, yeah, because that reciprocation, if you will, it may not come around today, tomorrow, it may be 20 years down the line, but that's okay. I mean,
yeah,
like you said, you didn't hear that encouragement, if you will, until you're in your 40s. Wow.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
it may not have people, there's a lot of people that just don't understand, but that's okay. Continue your growth, continue your path, because I always think of the racehorse. They wear blinders for a reason, because they're not
right,
running down the track doing this, looking each side to side. They're
right,
looking at the end result. What do you want out of this? What is your race? What are you going for?
yeah,
And as long as you're, not looking at the backside of another horse, just keep going as fast as you
yeah,
can, learn as much as you can. Um, what are some things with that idea?
uh-huh.
Um, what are some people, or who are some people that inspired you to do what you're doing?
Uh, uh, Richard Bowles, he's the author of What Color's Your Parachute. Uh, he uh, he was a great influence in my life. I actually, I had an uncle who his name was Willard Tate. He was a coach at Abilene College and takes a basketball coach at Abilene College. He never played basketball, and they won 2 championships. And Willard was just the most unusual guy, and he taught me so much. He said, I said, "How'd you?" He said, "When they asked me to be a coach, the first thing guy I called was Bobby Knight. That was 20
Yeah,
years ago."
yeah.
And he said, "Do you know Bobby?" He said, "I didn't. I just called him and said, they asked me to be a coach. Would you help me?" He called, then he called Wooden out of
Yeah,
California,
John Wooden.
John Wooden. And they both were at his funeral. And
Wow.
he said, I called them, I asked them to help me. They stuck with me and taught me that. So he taught me. I called Richard Bowles and said, "I want to get in this work. Will you help me?" He said, "Come on out."
All right.
And I said, "How can I pay you?" He said, "Give it away."
Hmm. Yeah.
And so he really inspired me. I've had so many small time leaders in my life that have encouraged me. A guy named Jim Marshall, who helped me get in this work. He was with Dale Carnegie and
Okay.
had left and met me on a plane after I lost my job uh, at a place I lost my whole career when I was in the ministry, and left. I met him on a plane and got to talk to him. He said, "What are you doing, Mike?" I said, "Nothing. You know, I'm unemployed. I really do like to do training and stuff." And he said, looked at me, he said, "Would you like for me to help you?" Didn't know this guy, and I thought, well, yeah, you know what's the deal?
Right.
And he said, "Here's the deal." And he literally came to town to help me get started and just poured into me and taught me just how to. And he's another one who's an encourager. I did my first seminar, and he came in to watch me do it, and I didn't do a very good job. You know I didn't. At the end of it, he looked me in the eye and he said, "Mike, you did that with you spoke with a lot of authority." That was all. That's all he said. That was 30 years ago. Guess what?
Wow.
I can still remember those words.
Yeah.
One word of encouragement. Otherwise, you know, if I'd have waited to get the evaluations, I'd have probably quit. what I was doing. But it's just by him stepping up. And that day when he came to see me, we had a real small number of people, and we were walking to the airplane. And I said, I'm really disappointed. Just a small number of people showed up. And he said, Mike, just remember, God always sends the perfect number.
Yeah.
There was somebody in that room that needed to hear this. And from that, actually, I got 2 clients that kind of got me started in my business. It's just all those little things that people have done. And it's so easy to do. It's so easy to step by and not do it. And
Right.
So anyway.
Well, and it is interesting you mentioned that, because they took the time to notice those things. They took the time to say something to you. It didn't cost them anything. Okay, a few minutes of their time to tell you some good things, some things you needed to hear, some things you needed to understand, and remind you, like you said, the right number of people were in that room.
Yeah.
And it grew from there. I've been in those situations. I've had opportunities where I spoke to 1,100 kids, and you have them from sitting like this, scared because they have to be there, and then you got the ones over there that are like, what are you going to tell me?
Yeah.
And when you change the one that's sitting there like this, and he's on the edge of your seat by the time you're done, and you only have 5 minutes, that's okay. I got one person. That's what I needed to do, was get that one person to change their perspective.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about.
It is. It truly is. Yeah, those warm eyeballs that light up. And yet, the work I do is mainly with executives and folks like that, but I do get a chance to work with a lot of their children. Of course, they send them to me to help find their way, and that is the biggest delight of my life, is to sat down with this kid who had graduated from college about 5 years ago, and he was in finance and he hated it.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to him for a few minutes, and he started talking about, I said, what do you do? What do you enjoy when you were growing up? He said, all he talked about was building bridges with his grandfather out on the farm, building bridges, putting fences up. I looked at him and I said, you know what? You're an engineer. And he said, and I called an engineering friend of mine, and went over there, started did running for them, hung around. Finally, they sent him back to school. He got his degree. Now he's running for the Southern companies here in Georgia. He's running all the solar power stuff all over the nation. Yeah. And just that one little 1 hour conversation, that's, I did what other people have done for me. I looked at him and I said, you have a gift inside of you.
Right.
You need to go for it. And that, those are really what matter. Those little things I get to do that. I don't speak to big groups of kids, but I do get to look one-on-one with them sometimes.
Well, and that's you get a direct impact that way. And that's great too, because whether it's an audience of 1,100 or one-on-one, it's making that difference, helping them to see that value they have within them and seeing the opportunity that's out there. And most of the time, it's just that change of perspective, that little bit of turn just 20 degrees to your left and look at it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the reasons I wrote my first book, The White Shirt, because the kids would come in and I have like 5 drawings I draw on my whiteboard that any kid in an hour, if they want it, they get it. They get what to do, how to find a job, how to find their career. So I kind of put all that in that book, and for, really kind of was for kids, and it's turned out to help a lot of other people, but just the simplicity and letting people just kind of see that's kind of where I find my joy. And everybody needs to find theirs.
That's very appreciative, because I know as adults, we'll tend to complicate everything we can.
Yeah.
We'll make a mess out of nothing.
Yeah.
And, you got to remind everybody, slow down. Let's break this down. What's the reality of the situation? And it helps them relieve worry, helps them relieve stress, helps them get a clear head and looking at things. Right. So those are all good things to help people with, to look for that future, goal they may want.
Right. Yeah.
Well, okay. In summary, what's some good ways some people can get a hold of you? I mean, you got a lot of things going. You got a blog, you got a podcast, you got books, you got your website. Tell us about those.
Yeah. Well, I have 3 books. One is called Design a Life That Works. It's actually how to put a strategic plan together for your life. Actually wrote it for engineers and design architects who understand design. So you take those principles of design and apply them to your life. And my other two books, The White Shirt is How to Find a Life-Giving Career in a Life-Giving Way. And it shows you, I have a set of videos online. You can go through it. There's a workbook. And it's the only career book ever designed to be done with a friend. Because two are better than one, because if one falls down, there's another to pick him up. Ecclesiastes tells us that. So it actually is written for you to buy it with a friend and to read it together. And there's videos for every time you meet. So I've got that. And so people call me a lot of times that want me to help them, but I really can't. Well, anyway, it costs sometimes too much. And I'll just say, get a friend and do this book together, and you'll find your career. So that's The White Shirt. And now it's Roll Up Your Sleeves, which is leading and living in a world of constant change, and has the same kind of drawing. I draw all the time, so I have a bunch of hand drawings inside that show people how they can move through these waves of transition and find your next promised land. So those are my two books. My blog is called The Leadership and Life Journal. It's there's only 4 paragraphs in every one, so it's a quick read. It's just about things I run across in my work, in my life, and it's the tagline. It reminds you of important things you already know. And then my blog is Small Time Leaders. I started that this year. It's in 27 countries, by the way. We just found out yesterday. It's kind of, but so it's and it's about. I interview accomplished people about the people in their lives who did a small thing that changed the way they live and work today. We all have those small time leaders. And my theme song, if you listen to it, as you know, is It's a Small World.
Small world.
And I need to tell you how that came about, because that was a miracle. I was praying about whether I should do this podcast, because there's everybody has a podcast. And I'm going, is there a reason? Is there really a reason for me to do this, God? And so I'm praying about that. And I talked to my guy who's setting it all up. He says, you need a theme song if you want to do this small time leader thing. And so I play worship music every morning. That's how I start my day. And I study my Bible. And then, my music went off, and guess what came on my phone?
Yeah.
It's a Small World. It just came on.
Huh. Wow.
And I thought, I think I got my answer. and then I said, well, how can I afford to put a Walt Disney song? I can't afford the rights to that. And so my guy did research, and he found out that is the only Walt Disney song that was never copyrighted. It was given as a gift to the children of the world.
Wow. Very cool.
I mean,
I didn't know that.
Wow. No, I didn't. I mean, I didn't either. So that's how it all came about. So I just
great.
So anyway, those are the things I do, and I have 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and I raise English setters. I'm a quail hunter, and also a fly fish. I just got back from Alaska. I caught some salmon up there. So I love the outdoors. So that's that had nothing to do with getting in touch with me, but I'm sure you'll have all my website, Michael Alan Tate, ALAN Tate.com is my website. Everything there is there, and all my LinkedIn stuff and all that's together. So
And we'll have all that in the show notes, so we'll make sure everybody gets that. We'll put, the titles of the book, so everybody, everybody gets that information, because this has been a lot of fun. I want to thank you for your time today. I appreciate your encouragement and your wisdom to show people what we can do to have that positive perspective in our life. So thank you for being a part of the show.
Well, thanks. And I appreciate the time. And I'd leave with one thought, that is, one of my principles in my book is pray first. Before life gives you more than you can stand, kneel. And, if you're not praying, if you're just praying when you're in trouble, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's where this comes from for me, is that. So I just encourage everyone, maybe want to try that trick out as well. So anyway.
And that one's been around a long time. So, and it does work. So
it does. All right.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Bob.